This is America on the Road, winner of the International Automotive Media Conference Gold Medal Award for Radio, and now in its 25th year on the air. Thanks for being with us as we bring you the latest automotive information from around the world. The North American Car of the Year jury has announced its finalists, and we'll have them for you. And if you have problems connecting your phone to your car, you are not alone. We'll have the J.D. Power survey data for you, so stay with us for that. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average of $670 with Mercury, so imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at MercuryInsurance.com. Hi, I'm Jack Nerad. With me is co-host Chris Teague. Chris is based at one end of the country. I am at the other one, and one thing we have in common is testing cars. Chris, so great to talk to you again. I hope things are going well for you.
Things are going well, Jack, and one thing I can say that we don't have in common is the temperature, where I can say here in Maine, it's probably about half of what it is in your neck of the woods, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it's a little cooler here. We get somewhat of a winter where I live. Not the winter that you have in Maine, certainly, but a little cooler. But we've noticed that. It was misty this morning when I walked the dog, so that's going on. Another thing we have going on is a great guest. Our special guest is Cooper Ericksen. He is the Group Vice President of Product Planning and Strategy for Toyota here in North America. Really interesting guy. We had a chance to sit down with him just a day or so ago at the all-new, and talk about a bit about the all-new battery electric Toyota BZ4X, their new compact crossover, just announced. And we also talk with him about Toyota's plans for electrification going forward. It is fascinating stuff, because it isn't the pablum that some other manufacturers are putting out there. So stay with us for that. In the road test segment, Chris, what are you going to be talking about?
I spent a week with the Ford Broncos, the first edition trim, so very excited to talk about that.
Yeah, we've got some all-new cars that are quite interesting to talk about. I spent the better part of a week with the Hyundai Santa Cruz compact pickup truck. It might be a new nameplate to a lot of people, but I had a chance to drive that at some length. So we've got some all-new vehicles that are quite exciting, contenders for various North American Car of the Year awards, which is also exciting. So we'll have that for you. And when we come back, we will have those North American Car of the Year finalists just announced. I happen to be on the jury, so I had a hotline to that information. So stay with us for that with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad with you, and we thank you so much for being with us right here on America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road with Chris Teague. Jack Nerad back with you, and we're so glad you're with us. We really do appreciate you listening to America on the Road. We have some, I think, very fascinating news for you, because we have the North American Car of the Year, Truck of the Year, and Utility of the Year finalists. They've just been announced, and we have all that information for you. And well, why don't I dive right in? I'm on the North American Car of the Year jury. As a matter of fact, I'm vice president of the organization this year, so I'm excited about these awards. Let's dive into the North American Utility Vehicle of the Year awards, because one of the vehicles on this list will be tested in this show. It is the Ford Bronco, and Chris Teague, you were driving that this week, so that's an interesting addition to the list of finalists. The Genesis GV70 is another vehicle that we have tested recently, I think maybe in last week's show. Or certainly within the last month, we have tested the Genesis GV70. And then there is the all-electric Hyundai Ioniq 5. So that's the list of the three utility vehicles of the year. What's your take on that, Chris?
I think it's interesting. So first of all, from both the Bronco and the other perspectives, is like new vehicles that hit the market, and they're able to hit the market with such composure. They're a fully formed product when they land. They do their job great. They do what they're advertised to do. So it's an exciting time for new vehicles. I think that as we move towards electrification, even sort of the last gasps of internal combustion engines, that's going to be an exciting time to watch.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Chris, and I think you'll be interested in hearing the interview we did with Cooper Ericksen about the electrification and whether it is indeed the last gasp of internal combustion engines, because I think that's going to happen well after I breathe my last gasp, but that is my take on that. Let's go back to the North American Truck of the Year finalists. They are the Ford Maverick, their new compact truck. Another vehicle tested in this show, the Hyundai Santa Cruz, another compact pickup truck. We hadn't had any of those in years and years and years. Now we have two, and they're both finalists for North American Truck of the Year. And then an all-electric vehicle, the Rivian R1T. I'm curious about your reaction to these three vehicles, Chris.
Well, it's not surprising that compact and smaller trucks are coming back. I mean, full-size and mid-size pickups are among the most popular vehicles here. Again, I will say that it's surprising and it's encouraging to see how nice the products are that have hit the market. The Rivian is especially interesting to me. I haven't driven one yet. I don't know if you have. I know a lot of people, journalists, have had the opportunity to drive one. But man, what a compelling product it is just out of the gate. So, I know that you guys are looking at this year or what's coming up for 2022, but it'll be exciting to see what Rivian does going forward.
It's interesting that you say it's a compelling product, because I think in a lot of ways it is. And at the same time, I kind of scratch my head and go, who is the buyer for this truck? Who is the buyer for the $70, $80, maybe over $100,000 mid-size pickup truck that doesn't look all that pickup truck-like? It's not particularly macho, for example. I think it's a different buyer. We'll have to see, but that's going forward. Let me give you the finalists for North American Car of the Year. They are the Honda Civic, the all-new Honda Civic we have tested for 2022. The Volkswagen Golf, the Golf R and Golf GTI, essentially as an entry. Really fun to drive vehicles that I had a chance to drive recently. And then another fascinating vehicle from a startup company, the Lucid Air luxury all-electric sedan. What do you think, Chris?
That's a broad cross section of vehicles. That's what I will say. The Air specifically, I mean, just the range numbers are insane. But you brought up the price in the last segment on Rivian. I think that's going to be a big question mark for me going forward. And they're kind of a small volume operation. Hopefully they grow. The Honda Civic is excellent for 2022, so no complaints there. But and it's interesting to see where the committee landed on these. But I'll be excited to find out who the actual car ends up being.
Yeah, I will too. I'm one of only 50 voters. We never know until they are announced. So it will be fascinating. But here you have two very conventional cars, the Honda Civic and the Volkswagen Golf, about as conventional and mainstream as you can get. And then a car that's off in the stratosphere somewhere, the Lucid Air from a startup company, a fascinating tech. I had a chance to drive one at great length recently as they sold their first vehicles to consumers. So I had a chance to do that. So a fascinating bunch of stuff. Well, there's something else we promised you in the news, so let's get to that. And that is the J.D. Power Multimedia Quality and Satisfaction Study. And I'll tell you, what it found is people who have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, they have a lot of problems with that. So if you're having difficulty connecting up your wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you are certainly not alone in that. And I think that's something both you and I have experienced, isn't it, Chris?
Yes, I agree. And you've heard me pull the old man get off my porch routine a bunch of times here with wireless Apple CarPlay. The interesting thing is, and the J.D. Power study notes this, is that consumers are asking for these features. Consumers are not going to say demanding. People are probably not that mean about it, but the people want these features. Then they get the features and then quickly discover that A, they either don't think it worked like they thought it would be, or B, it doesn't work at all or period for them. So then they have these issues that the J.D. Power measures in per 100 cars. So the cars that are able to pull it off and get good scores in this study are the ones that either have a more intuitive interface, so their phones are able to work more easily with these systems wirelessly, or B, they have a more informed dealer network, and the people who are selling the cars are taking the time to educate the consumers when they buy. And so I think that is showing a clear payoff on the other side of the transaction with satisfaction for the buyers. So, hopefully it gets smoother, but also I think, that people could be asking more questions of the dealership, and the dealer could be more proactive with the education they're providing.
Yeah, one of the things that's troubling to me, Chris, and I don't know whether you've experienced this or not, is it's like intermittent problems where you have the vehicle and the phone connect and everything seems fine, and then suddenly you're disconnected and you can't reconnect. And that could happen either wirelessly or even with a wired connection. And there's just a lot of things that can go wrong there. And people, of course, depend on their phones. That is the piece of consumer equipment that everybody seems to absolutely depend on as their lifeline. What's been your experience with that?
That has been my experience. It's not a consistent technology yet, and this is not a single automaker's problem. We've tested these features, and I've tested them in Fords, in Hondas, and Hyundais, and they all express some, or they all show some difficulty and inconsistency in connection. Right? You want to get in the car and drive off and have your phone connect immediately, and not have to go through the pairing phase and all that, and that just doesn't happen yet. So we're a ways off from a smooth user experience, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely true. Here are some of the top performing vehicles according to this J.D. Power study. In the midsize and large car class, the Nissan Maxima. I think I've had pretty good luck with all the infotainment systems and the connectivity in the Nissan Maxima. In the midsize large premium category, the Cadillac Escalade. They really hang their hat on their new infotainment system. And the Chevrolet Corvette, interestingly enough. In the small compact area, the Nissan Sentra. This is for the second consecutive year, and it also kind of points out maybe Nissan is doing a very good job in terms of connectivity. And then on the small compact premium side, the BMW 4 Series, a very specialty car. Do you have any comments about that, Chris?
Well, I'm interested in the BMW 4 Series specifically. We talked about this a couple of months ago on the show where I had a 4 Series convertible. The wireless Apple CarPlay was a little spotty. Of course, you can opt for wired Apple CarPlay. So it's interesting for me to hear that. Cadillac, I think, is an impressive result because of the sheer amount of technology they packed into the Escalade. Those giant screens, there's some night vision thrown in there. There's some augmented reality thrown in there. So for them to have pulled off such a good score, I think really says something about the thought that they put into the interface design. So good for them.
Absolutely, and it's difficult. So, there's a lot of whining about this, but I think there's whining because there is some difficulty in making this stuff work, and making it work with everybody's phones, including the ancient iPhone that I have. I don't even remember what iteration of iPhone I have, and I know you're a tech guy, so you probably have stuff that's more recent than what I have. But when we come back, we will be doing some road testing, and we love that. These are both North American Car of the Year and Truck of the Year nominees, the Ford Bronco and the Hyundai Santa Cruz. So stay with us for that with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad with you. And we're so glad you're with us right here on America on the Road. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad with you, and it is road test time. And not only do we have road test vehicles, we have very prominent road test vehicles for you this week. They are both nominees in the North American Car, Truck, and Utility of the Year competition. The winners in that competition will be announced in January here. But Chris, you were testing the Ford Bronco, a vehicle we've talked about on the show a lot, I guess. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, I finally got some wheel time with the Ford Bronco. I'm very, very excited about this. This is the larger of the two vehicles that Ford released, the Bronco Sport being the smaller crossover SUV. I tested the first edition model, which sold out pretty quickly after Ford's announcement when they opened the order bank. So you can no longer buy or order, I should say, a new first edition. You could try your luck at a dealership and may find some markups there. However, this vehicle has the upgraded twin turbocharged V6 engine. It's a 2.7 liter unit. I think it makes around 310 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque. The standard engine is a 4-cylinder. It's a 2.3 liter turbocharged engine, around 270 horsepower. And so I tested it with a 10-speed automatic transmission. There's a 7-speed manual offered here. And one thing, Jack, I want to get your feelings about. I'm testing a 2-door Bronco. I don't know if you've driven both the 2 and the 4. I would love to have been able to try the 4 back to back here. But what are your thoughts on sort of everyday livability with a 2-door or a 4-door Bronco?
Well, I bet you're going to tell us a bit about the livability with the 2-door, and so I won't kind of pimp that a little bit, but I'll let you talk a bit about that. I think the 4-door, in my mind, is much more practical than the 2-door. On the other hand, the 2-door is very true to what the Ford Bronco used to be. So I guess you choose which one you like, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, well, I was actually firm in 4-door camp with the Bronco. My wife and I had talked about buying one a few times just to have a kind of an open top vehicle that we could drive year round if we needed to. But now after driving the 2-door for tomorrow will make a full week, I've been able to get the kids in and out just fine. Obviously, it's not as convenient for them to climb from behind around the front seats, I should say, and then hop out. But it's not as bad as I thought it would be. And I think that the off-road capability of the 2-door may be more compelling for people buying the Bronco, especially if they're going to use it as it is intended to be used, right? So off-road. But one thing I will say is, the thing that really has impressed me about the Bronco is its on-road manners. People talk about how the Jeep Wrangler can feel a little bit jittery at times over broken pavement and whatnot. And I think a lot of this is due to the Bronco's large tires on this package, the first edition package. But the suspension, the independent rear suspension, is doing a great job at keeping the vehicle planted, making it feel predictable and confident on the road. So if you had to live with a Bronco as your only vehicle, which a lot of people couldn't afford to buy that, plus a weekend fun vehicle, you could do so without a huge trade-off in comfort. Inside the vehicle has Ford calls it Active X. It's not quite leather, it's not quite vinyl, so it's a very easily cleanable fabric on the upholstery. The first edition trim comes with the upgraded 12-inch touchscreen. However, there's an 8-inch that is standard, so both units run Ford's Sync 4 infotainment system. This is going to support over-the-air updates so that you can improve the vehicle's electronics, add new features, and update things like the maps over time without having to go back to the dealership every time. And then the back seat comfort level, we talked about having kids in a 2-door Bronco. They sit up high. They can see out the front, so they love that. The side windows on the 2-door Bronco are up far enough that they can see the road around them. So for kids in the back seat, I think that's a great perspective. They love it. They have a lot of fun. It is a little bit smaller than I would like to have for a family vehicle, but like I said, definitely manageable. I think where you might find the biggest fall down, or downfall rather, with a 2-door is in cargo space, where the 4-door has a larger cargo hold in the back. But all around, I think that for such a first year effort, it's a great product. I think, Jeep should be nervous, and they probably have been for quite some time, but the Bronco does so well on road that I couldn't imagine feeling like you're missing out by buying a 2-door or the 4-door, because you're going to have a great experience all the way around.
I do think it's a great experience, and I was fascinated to hear you talk a bit about the back seat, because my experience with the back seat there, and I was doing photography in the back seat, climbed into the back seat. Of course, I'm testing the back seat, but I was also taking pictures of the dash and doing this and that, and it seemed a bit claustrophobic back there to me. Of course, I'm a 5'11" adult, not quite the 6 foot tall that you are, Chris, but right up there. And it seemed a little tight and also kind of a little dark. So the fact that your kids liked it back there, I think that's a breath of fresh air. That's good news.
I think the ride height and the seat height too help them out. They love being able to see out the front of the vehicle. I think that's a big thing for them. But they're also not 5'11" or 6 feet tall. So, adults may feel differently.
Yeah. Well, you have them in booster seats, as you should, and that's the safe way to travel with kids at the back seat in boosters when they're that size and shape and that poundage. So that's a great thing. Well, I was driving an all-new vehicle, and essentially an all-new vehicle type. It is the 5-passenger compact pickup truck, the Hyundai Santa Cruz, 2022 model Hyundai Santa Cruz, not to be confused with the Hyundai Santa Fe. And it's hard to mention this vehicle without mentioning the Ford Maverick, which is essentially playing in the same sandbox, although the vehicles actually are quite different. I would say the Santa Cruz is a pony of a different color. It could be viewed as a compact sport utility with an open bed, instead of having the typical cargo compartment like you would have in the Ford Bronco we just talked about, a covered cargo compartment. I would also say in the turbocharged form, that's the up-level engine form, it's kind of like a sports sedan that has this pickup truck bed attached to it. It's really fun to drive. I was really surprised by that. In terms of styling, it borrows themes from crossovers, pickup trucks, and sports sedans. And the open bed is great. It also has a factory-installed tonneau cover that's available. It goes over the bed. It slides kind of like a big window shade would slide. And that's a good thing, having that covered lockable storage. Almost watertight, not quite. The big difference, I think, between these small pickup trucks that have just been introduced and the small pickup trucks we saw in the 70s and 80s, when Chris was a child, or maybe not even around, was these are 5-passenger vehicles. They're not just 2-passenger vehicles, little tiny things, but they can hold 5 passengers in real seats. And the Santa Cruz has an interior that is almost identical to the Hyundai Tucson crossover utility. And by that, I think it's a very good thing. It's about 1.5 cubic feet larger than the Mavericks, according to EPA measurements, so that's good. And it has a 60/40 flip-up rear seat, so that provides additional storage space. Good infotainment, 10.25-inch infotainment touchscreen is the up-level version. 8-inch screen is the standard touchscreen, and it has all the requisite Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, etc., etc. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are offered with the 8-inch screen, but not with the 10.25-inch screen. A little weird anomaly in Hyundai vehicles right now. Power comes from a 2.5-liter, 191 horsepower 4-cylinder engine. That's the base engine. It drives either the front or all 4 wheels through an 8-speed conventional automatic transmission. And then the up-level engine is a turbocharged 2.5-liter 4-cylinder that offers 281 horsepower. It has an 8-speed wet dual-clutch transmission with manual shift capabilities. Chris, I should let you weigh in on Santa Cruz. What are your thoughts about this vehicle?
You know, it's kind of funny. You and I were on the launch of the Santa Cruz together. I think I used to laugh at Hyundai for the branding that they stuck behind it. You know, I think it's they steered way far away from calling it a pickup truck. But now that, you know, we drove it and spent some time with it, I can see that they cleverly walked the line. So it definitely feels, like you say, as a car or a sports sedan, but it has that open bed, and they've added some unique notching and other things for customers to add their own racks and different gear storage solutions. And I think it's been great the way it's packaged, you know, the sliding tonneau cover, which is a great thing for people who carry things that need to be locked up in their bed. And at the same time, you can throw your family in the front and go on a road trip, and you don't feel like you're missing out. You're not in a pickup truck. You're not even in like a rugged utility vehicle. You're in something that feels much more like a car. So I haven't driven the Maverick yet, but it'll be interesting to see, you know, how these two progress over time. If Ford or Hyundai decides, you know, maybe we need to add more capability and they lose some of the comfort, or whether they go more heavily towards the comfort side and cut some capability. But for now, I think they've hit a good balance, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Santa Cruz really kind of does it all in a lot of ways. In turbocharged form, it'll go from 0 to 60 in about 7.5 seconds. That's not a rocket ship, but it sure is fun to drive, and the handling is terrific. And in terms of cargo space, and this I found kind of interesting, and towing, the Santa Cruz actually tows more than the Maverick does. Although the Maverick is pitched as full-on truck, this is a truck. We talked to their product planner and chief engineer about the vehicle a couple episodes ago, and they're all about truck all the time. Santa Cruz, not so much. Sports excitement vehicle or something like that is what they call it. But it also has pretty good capability, and it can tow up to 5,000 pounds, which is significantly more than the Maverick in tow. So I found that fascinating.
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard this story, but when Ford order holders for the Maverick had originally equipped their hybrid trucks with the 4K towing package, which was walked back after a while. So now that you can only get the 4,000-pound towing with the full gas powertrain, which is the upgraded option. So be interesting to see. But good on Hyundai for such strong capability.
Right. A little talk about pricing. It starts much more expensive, frankly, than the Maverick does at about $24,000. And then if you went all the way up to the top-level trim, you could have a Santa Cruz that cost you $40,000. So not inconsequential kind of pricing there. And again, I think pricier than the Ford Maverick, but in a lot of ways, a very different vehicle, and I think it's a fascinating addition to the whole automotive scene. So I'm glad to see that. We had, I think, 2 new vehicles on this show, the Ford Bronco and the Hyundai Santa Cruz, that are among the value leaders out there in this new wave of cars we're seeing.
I totally agree.
And when we come back, we will be speaking with Cooper Ericksen. He is the chief product planner. He's the vice president at Toyota in North America about the new all-electric vehicle, the BZ4X compact crossover that Toyota has just introduced. And we're going to be talking a bit about electrification going forward as well, much beyond that particular vehicle. So stay with us for that with Chris Teague. This is Jack Nerad with you. And thanks so much for being with us on America on the Road. Stay with us for more of America on the Road. Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad with you, and very exciting day here in Encinitas, California, and what a guest we have for you. Cooper Ericksen is head of product for Toyota. So many things to talk about here. You've introduced a car, a battery electric vehicle. That's an important step for Toyota. Let's start with that, but there's a lot of things I want to dive into. Number one, thanks for being with us, Cooper. Tell us a bit about the car you've introduced here.
Yeah, we just introduced the BZ4X. Which is a small SUV segment EV product. It's actually the third EV that we've launched. You know, we've had, many people don't realize this, but with our first generation RAV4 in 1997, we had an EV, and then 2012, we had another RAV4 EV. So we've learned and grown with those experiences, and we're super excited about this product. It's got typical SUV functionality. Range is going to be very competitive, mid 200s. It's going to be front wheel drive, all wheel drive, our latest state of the art multimedia and safety technology. And it's really the first of what will be many to come, into the future EVs. And the BZ brand in and of itself is a new global brand, and it's beyond zero. BZ is, beyond zero, which is an idea that it's more than just zero emissions in the vehicle. It's the ownership experience and the lifestyle. And then the 4X the 4 is the size of the vehicle. So globally, there might be a 5 or a 3, and it'll be bigger or smaller, And the X is a crossover. So there could be a sedan that wouldn't have the X. The X is crossover. So that's the
a lot
quick
of nomenclature to figure out.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it is. I feel we maybe overcomplicated the BZ4X naming, but it makes sense when you learn about it.
It makes sense globally, I'm sure, and I'm sure it makes sense to engineering types who have a hand in this, right? It strikes me that you're well positioned to do this vehicle, having done the previous RAV4 battery electrics, learned a lot, gone out of the market with those. The leader in crossover SUVs, certainly the RAV4, one of the most popular vehicles, the most popular other than trucks. How does that set you up for success with BZ4X?
Yeah, well, you're right. If there's a segment we're going to go into first, it makes a lot of sense to be in this small SUV segment. The RAV4 has had so much success. We have a lot of customers coming in looking for that type of a vehicle. It's a huge segment in the U.S. market. So it makes sense to have a vehicle that competes in that segment. And, the broader story of electrification, we've been moving really fast. We've been doing hybrids for 20 years, but the last couple of years, the acceptance and demand for hybrid has really increased, and we've seen that with RAV4, both with the Prime plug-in hybrid and the regular hybrid. Our volume has gone up a lot, and we can't keep up with demand. So another electrified option within that competitive set, we think is going to be really beneficial to us and meet the customer's needs, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what Toyota has done forever and ever, and it seems to work, doesn't it? Let's talk a bit about hybrids. You were an environmental leader, you being Toyota. Absolutely. The golden child of environmentalism, the greenest corporation out there. And now it seems like there is an element that is not seeing hybrids as being part of the solution, but actually being part of the problem. Talk about that, would you? And I think you breathed some fresh air into this on this whole issue, because there's other ways to skin the cat, aren't there? So
yeah.
Talk
well,
about that.
It's a really intriguing time to be in the automobile business. And Toyota's been pretty consistent for decades in our ambition to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We were investing in hydrogen and hybrid when gas was $1 a gallon and people weren't talking about this stuff. We've been passionate about this, and frankly, things have changed recently. And it's more top of mind for consumers. It's more top of mind for investors, for OEMs, and so there's more attention being paid to it. But one of the things we've been so consistent with is we don't really go out and give specifics about our plans that are 5 and 10 and years down the road. We focus on what we have today to sell to our consumers, and behind the scenes we're doing a tremendous amount of research and development, trying to figure out the best path to take. But recently OEMs have been really aggressive in making claims about 2030 and 2035. And they're doing it for whatever purpose that serves them. That's great. Not
maybe they're doing an IPO, for example.
Well, who knows? I'm not going to get into why. The bottom line is that's not something we do. So I think, unfortunately, there's a perception with some that because we're not talking about these things way off into the future, that we're actually we're not looking at ourselves as part of the solution and working really hard and fast.
Is there the perception, too, that anything that uses combustion is bad? That any CO2 released into the atmosphere is bad, and thus a hybrid is releasing CO2 when it's using its ICE, its internal combustion engine. Yeah. What's your take on all that?
Recently I heard an expression, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And the reality is our hybrid technology has done more for the environment than all EVs ever sold in the history of our country and the world combined. We've sold over 18 million hybrids, and that greenhouse gas benefit is equal to about 5.5 million EV sales. So forget about EV or hybrid. We have done for the environment the equivalent of 5.5 million EV sales. And that's super important because batteries don't grow on trees. It requires a lot of effort and frankly environmental impact to create a battery. So if we would have turned those 18 million hybrids into EVs for the same battery resources, you can only build 260,000 EVs. So for the price of 260,000 EVs, we impacted the environment the same as 5.5 million EVs. The bottom line is customers have to buy things in volume for it to have an impact on the environment. You can build a shiny project that sits in the corner that you only sell a few of.
And make big claims.
And make big, it has no impact on the real environment. Giving people an affordable alternative to a gas guzzling vehicle that's a hybrid that they can actually pay for and use for a long time, that's a real benefit to the environment. So we're proud of our record, and it's too bad that people don't view us like that anymore. But things ebb and flow, and I'm sure as we introduce products like this and we continue to introduce other products down the road, I think people will come around and understand what we've been doing behind the scenes, and they'll appreciate it.
Well, you've talked a bit about 4 pillars, 4 different kind of powertrain choices that are all green choices. They're just a variety of green, right? And offering that portfolio as opposed to a one-trick pony solution. Talk a bit about that. Let our listeners know what you were saying about that.
Yeah, so again, you have to create something that is widely used in order for it to have an impact on the environment. So right now, that's a hybrid for us. Dramatic reduction in greenhouse gas, improvement in fuel economy, and the value now over 4 generations of building hybrids, we've gotten the cost and the price and the performance to a point where customers can really afford it. But then we have people that want to drive EVs more. So we have a plug-in hybrid. And the plug-in hybrid, maybe you get 30, 40 miles on EV only, which satisfies the commuting of pretty much every customer. I mean, the average commuting is, 20, 30 miles a day.
So a lot of people in their daily life almost never go to the gas station, only need to go to the gas station maybe occasionally.
The plug-in hybrid is beautiful because it allows somebody to run most of their errands and live their life on EV only, but yet when it's time to go on the summer vacation or tow the boat or, take a trip with the kids to see the grandparents, you can get on the road and there's no compromise. You fill it up, you go 600 miles on a tank of gas and no problem. So hybrid has a role, plug-in hybrid has a role, but EV also has a role that we're getting into now. EV is great for commuting, short distances, maybe not so good for a cross-country, road trip.
And by this, we're talking about battery electrics.
Battery electrics, battery electrics. Right. The infrastructure can be challenging, but that's going to be improving. But the bottom line is it takes a long time to charge a battery. And, best case, if you find a DC, it's 30 minutes to an hour, but the average time is closer to 10 hours, if you plug it into a level 2.
Right.
And then as weight increases, like hauling things, the battery has to get bigger, and batteries are really, really heavy. So it's this diminishing returns. The battery has to get bigger to haul the weight, and then the battery has to haul its own weight. And so it doesn't become practical for heavy-duty applications. So that's where hydrogen comes in. It's ultra lightweight, super powerful. It is electric. It's an electric battery that happens to use hydrogen for an energy source. There's no combustion, zero emissions. And that's ideal for heavy-duty truck applications because of its capability to run 24 hours a day. So again, it's a portfolio approach. They each have their needs. There is no one solution for every customer. So we have to keep our options open and respond to customer demand as those individual markets expand.
Yeah, and as the BZ comes into the market, you're going to have an example in the marketplace of each of those technologies. And here's a key question, I think. How concerned are you about government prescribing a single solution?
Well, that's a great question. The reality is the massive investment needed to achieve a carbon neutrality future you can't get around the fact this is a massive investment for everybody. We're all going to pay for this. Now, there's a benefit to us paying for it. So we're not worried about government supporting it. We think government must support it. I think where our opinion lies is that we would want government to support various technologies that have the same result for greenhouse gas reduction.
Maybe goals-based as opposed to prescribing a particular technology.
Yeah, we need the support. Even supporting one technology is probably better than supporting none. But it would be our desire to have hydrogen, plug-in hybrid, battery electric vehicles, and even hybrid recognized as a benefit.
What do you think the landscape is going to look like in 5-7 years? There's a lot of talk about 2030, so maybe let's take 2030. What is the mix going to be? What's your best prediction about what that's going to look like for the average consumer out there? And when they go into the showroom, what are they going to be choosing among?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll give you a couple different timelines. So first of all, it's hard to predict the future. If we went back 2 or 3 years.
That's your job.
Yeah, and that's why we don't make a lot of predictions. If you go back 2 or 3 years and ask somebody that same question, the results would be dramatically different than they are today. So, right now there are 20 BEV nameplates on sale in the U.S.
Battery electric vehicles. And we're tracking another 100 that will be in market by around 2025. Now, I think there's only like 250 total nameplates in the industry. So the number of EVs are going to be going up dramatically by 2025. And we are going to learn a lot about how customers respond in the individual segments. But by then, maybe EVs will be between 5 and 10% roughly of the overall. Today they're 2%. It's going up every year. So by 25, is it going to be 10%? It could be. Could it be higher? Yeah. Availability of batteries, and that's a huge deal. The infrastructure and supply chain, which we're learning more and more about, these days. And then that number is probably going to be, by 2030. There's been goals given by government agencies and by other brands to be 50% of the industry. Frankly, we think that's probably going to be a little aggressive, maybe, but that includes plug-in hybrids as well in those aspirations that are given by government agencies. So probably 30% BEV could be the industry. We'll be around that same number. Our plan is to be around 20-ish% battery electric right now, but 80% electrified. So the vast majority of everything we're selling will be a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, or a battery electric vehicle. When we get to the point where hybrid is a non-issue, that might be a good state.
Well, we've learned a lot about that. When a salesperson doesn't have a non-hybrid to compare to and a customer doesn't have a non-hybrid, the only thing they care about is how does the vehicle perform? Is it going to be reliable? Do I like its looks? Is it affordable? We've learned with Venza, we've learned with RAV4, we've learned with Sienna. You put a competitive product out there, if it's a hybrid, it's actually turning aspirational. People are starting to recognize that, but The Sienna has been a huge success. It's the number one volume minivan in the automotive industry today, gobbling up tons of market share and far exceeding our expectations.
And hybrid only.
It's hybrid only. 100% hybrid. It's the only way you can get it. We're making our hybrids more and more affordable, and so we're going to be putting them in more products, and that's going to be growing a lot over time.
Terrific. Well, Cooper Ericksen, thanks so much for being with us of Toyota. We appreciate you sharing your insights.
Thanks, Jack.
Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road. Welcome back to America on the Road with Chris Teague, Jack Nerad with you for listener question time as we sum up America on the Road for this week. Chris, I have a question for you, and it's from a guy named Owen. I think it's probably a guy. Owen in Rochester, New York. This is what Owen says. I was thinking about buying a new car, but I remember that a lot of car companies have end-of-year sales. Are we going to see end-of-year sales this year, or should I go ahead and buy a car now?
I think you may have a bumpy road if you're waiting on end-of-year sales. When the pandemic started, automakers started issuing incentives because they believed that people weren't going to be buying vehicles. That turned out to be not as much of a concern, so they drew back on some of those incentives. And they've really kind of been at a minimal level for the past, 6, 8, 10 months, especially as the microchip shortage rages on and it's hard to produce new vehicles. So there are still deals to be found on leases and loans or finance vehicles, but I don't think you're going to be able to find them on the most popular vehicles, nor will you be able to find them on the most popular configurations of vehicles. So if you're flexible on what you want and you can swap around and get a different trim or a different style, then maybe you'll find a good lease deal or a finance deal. But the advice from any other time of year stands. If you can wait right now, wait until things calm down. Yeah, Lexus is probably going to do a lot fewer of the big red bows this year. I think that December to remember may be a little slower.
Well, I think that's the end of the show. So, Chris, thanks so much for co-hosting. You always do a marvelous job, and I love sharing this hour with you. It's a lot of fun.
You as well, Jack. I'm very grateful for the time here and very grateful for the listeners that we have. And I will say, if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, you can head to sportsmapradio.com and find us on the Saturday morning schedule there and download both our original podcast and recording of the radio show, whichever is the flavor that you prefer.
Yeah, a lot of good flavors there of America on the Road. So thanks for being with us. We do appreciate it. And join us again next week for another edition of America on the Road. America on the Road is brought to you by Mercury Insurance and DrivingToday.com. If you're looking to save some money, you should switch to Mercury for your auto and home insurance. Californians save an average $670 with Mercury, so imagine how much you could save. Get a quote today at MercuryInsurance.com. And if you're looking to buy a new car, a used car, or just want automotive information, go to DrivingToday.com. Yes, that's DrivingToday.com. The official automotive website of America on the Road, drivingtoday.com.